Welcome back, boys and girls. Where we left off, Florida had gone over the edge. Let's find out what happens next. Chapter 20. I steeled my nerves and went inside. My grandmother was in a first-prize panic. Where is it? Where is it? It? Not she? That was a relief. Where is it? Where's the remote control? At least she hadn't noticed that I'd been gone. I have no idea, I shrugged. I was 100% sure I'd put it back on the coffee table last night. Then I think I know what happened, she hissed. Your grandfather has hidden it. Grandpa Jack shuffled from the bedroom in his robe and slippers. Holy guacamole! Can't a guy get a little shut-eye on a Sunday morning? Florida marched right up to him. Jack Brown, I want you to tell me where you put my remote control this instant. Right down the old garbage disposal where it belongs. Grandpa yawned. Florida flew to the kitchen straight for the sink. How dare you? Grandpa snorted and let out a small chuckle. I'm joking, Florida. Relax, why don't ya? I'm sure that evil piece of plastic is around here somewhere. My grandmother was not amused. She squinted her eyes at him, real narrow. You tell me right now, what did you do with it? Not a blasted thing. We'll find it, though frankly, it's the last thing in the world we ought to be doing. I reckon it would be better if that remote control in your big old fancy TV grew legs and made a beeline straight to the county dump. Florida glared at Grandpa Jack. Even so, Grandpa joined in and the three of us searched everywhere. We finally gave up. The remote control was definitely missing. For the love of Pete, what are you in such a big hurry to buy this morning? They got a special on new husbands? Grandpa chuckled at his own joke, but Florida stared at him steely-eyed. For your information, mister, you are not funny. Patsy has been on the hunt for some fabulous accessory to complete the ensemble she's wearing for her anniversary dinner. I thought I'd buy her a little present. How charitable, said Grandpa Jack, although he didn't sound as if he meant it. Hold on, never mind. I happen to have just the thing in the garage. I knew that fake fur vest I bought from the shopping mall network would come in handy someday. Uh-oh. We'd sold that fake fur vest at Big Daddy's flea market. Grandpa and I traded horrified looks as Florida raced to the garage, temporarily forgetting about her missing remote control. Are we in trouble? I asked. Quite possibly. Guess she was bound to figure it out some year or another. We sat in the kitchen awaiting the return of Hurricane Florida. All kinds of noises echoed from the garage, boxes being ripped open, shoved around, and toppled over. There was also a little swearing going on, but I don't want to repeat what I heard. It must have been at least a half an hour before my grandmother came back inside. Someone stole my things! She was spitting mad. Well, how about that? Grandpa used a kitchen knife to pick dirt from under his fingernails. Wasn't he gonna tell her the truth? Hand me the phone. I'm calling 911. Florida looked positively fierce. Sunshine, can you hand your grandma the telephone? I couldn't believe my ears. My grandfather was going to let Florida call the police? He might have been afraid to tell her the truth, but I wasn't. I was sick and tired of all their lies. And now I actually wondered if my grandpa had, after all, hidden the remote control. Florida, nobody's been stealing your stuff, I said. Grandpa and I sold your fur vest and a bunch of your other things at the flea market in Las Cruces. Sorry, Grandpa, I said to him, but it's the truth. Grandpa Jack stopped picking at his nails and stared at the floor. There was so much silence, the The kitchen clock sounded as loud as a ticking time bomb. Then the bomb exploded with a sonic boom. My grandparents proceeded to have the biggest fight in the history of fights. Florida screeched at Grandpa. Grandpa hollered at Florida. Florida threw silverware and plates. Fortunately, Grandpa ducked in time. Grandpa smashed a few of Florida's little ceramic poodles on the floor, which might seem funny, but it wasn't at the time. Florida, I am sick and tired of all this. Don't expect to see me again until you kick your shop and show habit for good. And he stomped out of the house. I ran after him. Sorry, Grandpa. But that was only partly the case. I wasn't sorry for telling the truth. I was just sorry that the truth made them so angry at each other. Grandpa sighed. Don't worry about it, sunshine. I guess I was hoping for a foolish minute that maybe I'd gotten away with it. So why rock the boat? Better to avoid a scene, know what I mean? Sort of. I guess if my grandmother thought some burglar had stolen her things, then Grandpa could have kept doing what he'd been doing for another 14 years. Anyway, I reckon in the long run, it's better to have everything out on the table. I suppose you did the right thing, telling the truth. Grandpa kissed me goodbye, got into his truck, slammed the door shut, and drove away. Florida was in the living room, sweeping up broken bits of shattered plates and poodles. I dug the backup remote control out of my underwear drawer and gave it to her. She clutched it to her chest and collapsed on the sofa. What would I do if I couldn't watch my shopping shows? She asked, and then she cried. I'd never seen her look that sad. Not even at my mom's funeral. Chapter 21. Florida did her best to stay away from the shopping shows. For the next 5 days straight, she called in sick at work and watched soap operas, game shows, and reality TV. Whenever she channel surfed, she stopped when she landed on a shopping show. It was as if her remote control button-pushing finger froze on the spot. She watched for 10 seconds with the saddest look in her eyes, like she was at a party, spying on a group of old friends who didn't want to hang out with her anymore. But she didn't buy a single thing. And you know what? I was actually proud of her. For that first week, packages piled up daily on the doorstep from all the purchases my grandmother had made before going cold turkey. Most likely, those silly hair bows she'd ordered for me were inside one of them. Thankfully, she seemed to have forgotten about them the way she forgot about so much of the stuff she bought. Before too long, the package deliveries would stop, and the UPS driver would probably think Florida had moved away or died. Most of the time, when Florida was in her TV trance, I taught Leroy tricks. By the end of the week, he could sit, stay, roll over, and fetch a ball without popping it. That dog was smart. I only saw Rosalie Claire once that week. She was outside sweeping her porch 4 days after Grandpa left. I have a confession to make, she said. When you dropped your sketchbook and ran off into the house with your grandpa the other day, I took a peek. That was a wonderful picture you drew of Leroy. You got a mighty big talent for such a young girl. Thanks, I said. Maybe you could sketch a picture of me sometime. That would be nice. I already had. It was right after I'd arrived, and I'd drawn Rosalie Claire in all her layers, her eyes spinning like pinwheels. It wasn't nice at all. It was goofy and mean. Maybe I could, I said, as I double hoped she hadn't flipped the book's pages to see the nasty drawing. Where have you been? I asked her. My job at the retirement home. I work with old folks who've lost their memories, always trying to help them make the here and now a little bit better. Losing your memory sounded like the saddest thing ever. Sometimes memories are all you have left of a person. And believe me, I should know. I was thinking, about baking a blueberry pie. Want to help? My mom used to make the best blueberry pie in the history of pies. I hadn't had any since we baked one together last summer. I longed for a piece, but I didn't want a chance going over there when Florida was home. Thanks. Maybe another day, I said. Anytime, she said. I kept asking Florida when she was going back to work. When I'm good and ready, she said, as she stared like a zombie at the TV. I hoped she'd be ready any minute. I wanted to take Rosalie Clare up on her offer of pie. And even more than that, a fluttery feeling in my gut told me she had important secrets I should know. On night number 5 of her stay-at-home marathon, Florida finally announced that she was returning to work. But not before I indulge in a little pampering, she said. First thing in the morning, Patsy and I are off on a beautification mission. Lucky you. You'll have the day to yourself. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and I wasn't going to be doing it by myself. Chapter 22. Most of the night, I dreamed about making blueberry pie with my mom. I even smelled its sugary sweetness in my dreams, but I awoke to the stench of hairspray. Florida was busy beautifying herself so she could spend the day getting beautified. Go figure. The second she left, I hurried outside and unhooked Leroy. Then I knocked on Rosalie Clare's back door. When she answered, an unmistakable fragrance filled the air. Good morning, Madison. You're just in time. I just finished baking a pie. Blueberry. It's my favorite, I said. Mine too. Leroy followed me inside and sat in his usual spot under the kitchen table. While Rosalie Clare pulled the pie from the oven and set it on a rack to cool, I studied a framed photograph that hung above the table. In it, a man held up a fishing pole with nothing but an empty hook on the end of the line. He was cracking up as if someone had told him a really funny joke. That lovely man never could catch a fish to save his life. Is that your brother? I asked. No, that's my Thomas. Someday, he's going to be my husband. She told me all about him. They'd met in New Orleans. We worked together evenings writing for a neighborhood newspaper called the Bywater Sun-Times. It was named that because we only put the paper out sometimes. Thomas was the kindest man I've ever met. At first, we were just friends. And then it turned into something more. The day Hurricane Katrina was on its way, the danger of the situation drove me to tell Thomas the truth, that I loved him, and he confessed he loved me back. When the hurricane hit and we were holed up in the shelter, he proposed. But you didn't get married? We decided to wait. My Grandma Daisy was ill, so I came back here to take care of her. Thomas joined me until early last year and left 3 months before my grandma died. He bought a restaurant and an old inn down in Costa Rica that he's busy fixing up. It's something he's always wanted to do. Sooner or later, I'll join him. But who knows when. That lovely man can be slower than molasses in January when he takes on a project. I hoped he'd be super slow. I didn't want Rosalie Clare leaving anytime soon. I was just getting to know her. I have an idea. How about we pack up this pie and take a stroll over to the park? We can have a picnic and do a little catch and release fishing. Sounds perfect, I said. While Rosalie Clare carefully wrapped the pie in foil and slipped it into a straw picnic basket, I tied Leroy back up in his yard. By the time I returned, she had 2 fishing poles she'd retrieved from the garage. Then she pulled a windbreaker over her sweater, even though the morning was hot and still. We headed down toward T or C. That's what the locals called Truth or Consequences. I crossed my fingers, hoping and praying we wouldn't run into Florida. We passed house after house, their yards dotted with rocks, tumbleweeds, and not much more. We didn't spy a single person, Dog, cat, or living or breathing thing. Nothing. The only amazing part was the sky, with white, fluffy clouds drifting overhead. My favorite thing to do here is to watch those clouds, Rosalie Clare said. Mine too, I told her. What else was there to do in this town? Did you grow up here? I moved here to live with my Grandma Daisy the summer I turned 15. She was my rock after my folks passed. They died? Both of them? How? Car accident in the days before seatbelts. I'm sorry, I said. Wow. I just asked her the same question I hated everyone else asking me. Maybe next time when someone asked how my mom died, I'd cut them a little slack. That was the hardest time of my life, she said. But Grandma Daisy stood by me. I lived with her until I left for college. The same as Florida and me. Only Florida wasn't exactly my rock. More like a thorn in my side. When she died, Grandma Daisy left me the house. Guess I'll have to sell it when I move to Costa Rica. I think you would have liked her, she said. She was the first African-American woman to move here back in the 1960s. Opened up a little shop that sold crystals and herbs, healing stuff. Grandma loved this little town. She always said it had magic in the air. We crossed onto Main Street and Rosalie Clare pointed up ahead to an old adobe storefront. That's my grandma's old shop, Wildflower Mercantile. Still in business. Years ago, they carried fanny packs just like mine. Even today, it's the only place for miles around that still sells magic potions and healing stones. As we passed by, we peered into its dusty windows filled with crystal balls, jars of herbs, and dancing rays of rainbow light. When I looked up, I felt a stab of fear in my stomach. Florida and Patsy were halfway up the block, heading our way. I wished I could disappear into a crack in the sidewalk. What was I going to do? I noticed the visitor center right next door. Let's check out this place. I ducked inside and Rosalie Clare followed me. I pretended to study a bulletin board that stood on wheels in the middle of the room. It was covered with modern-day photos of Truth or Consequences. All the while, I kept on the lookout for Florida. I reminded myself that she was on a beautification mission, so this would probably be the last place she'd come. When I could hear Florida and Patsy's chatter echoing from the sidewalk, I darted behind the bulletin board. My heart pounded like a jackhammer. Something caught my eye while I waited. On the flip side of the bulletin board were old black and white photos of the town. Truth or Consequences looked almost exactly the same, but underneath the picture, it said Hot Springs. Weird. Thankfully, the giddy voices faded down the street. The coast was clear. Why does it say the town has a different name? I asked Rosalie Clare. It's the funniest story. Back in 1950, the local folks voted to change it on account of a contest. At that time, Truth or Consequences was a popular radio show. The host, Ralph Edwards, said the first town to officially change its name to match the show would win. Said he'd personally show up to broadcast his program once a year. This town was the only one to take him up on his offer. Wow, that seemed kind of lame to me. The people in town thought it would get them a lot of publicity and bring in a flood of tourists, Rosalie Clare explained. Judging by the empty streets, I guessed it hadn't worked out so well. Now, are you ready to try your hand at a little fishing? She asked. I nodded and we headed for the door. Above it, I noticed a long banner with big bold letters. It said, "Hello there, we've been waiting for you." That's what Ralph Edwards said at the beginning of every show, Rosalie Clare said. It's the town's unofficial slogan. I got that same fluttery feeling in my stomach. Had Truth or Consequences Been waiting for me? It was just a stupid old slogan, right? Or was it? Chapter 23. Ralph Edwards Park was at the far end of town. When we got to the pond, we sat in the shadiest spot under a cottonwood tree. Rosalie Clare shivered. How could anybody be cold in this weather? By now, I realized I could probably ask her anything, so I did. I've always got a chill, she told me. You know what they say, cold hands, warm heart. Well, I figure I must be warm down to my soul since I'm always freezing. So that's why she wore so many layers of clothes. My mom would have taken me to the doctor if I was putting on that many sweaters. I suppose she would have, she said. Duly noted. Then Rosalie Clare unzipped her fanny pack. Let me see. She rummaged around and pulled out 2 hooks with yellow feathers attached and a big jar of wiggling worms. As always, her pack contained just what was needed. I'm not too good at this, I told her. I only caught 2 things when I went fishing with my best friend Violet on Bainbridge Island. A plastic vegetable bag and an old sneaker. Rosalie Clare laughed. It just takes patience and the right colored fly. Yellow feathers for sunny weather and red feathers when it's cloudy. She showed me how to thread the worm on my hook, and then she helped me cast my fishing line way out into the middle of the shimmering pond. We hadn't been fishing for more than 2 minutes when something tugged my line. Well, it appears that you have much better luck fishing than my Thomas. Rosalie Clare helped me reel in a 12-inch trout, which was way more exciting than catching a plastic bag or an old shoe. The fish flopped like mad as I carefully worked it off the hook. I was trying not to hurt it, since we planned on throwing it back. I poked my finger on the sharp tip of the hook. Blood spurted out. Ouch! Rosalie Clare had me press on the puncture to seal the wound. She released the fish back into the water, unzipped her fanny pack, and pulled out a Band-Aid and a tube of Neosporin. It's like you have everything in the world in there. Not everything, just the things I need. She spread ointment on the inside of the bandage and wrapped it tight around my finger. But how do you know what to bring? Or is it magic? You tell me. My Grandma Daisy gave me this fanny pack for my 18th birthday. I've collected all sorts of things and stuffed them in there. Whenever I look inside, there are things I've put in and things that have just shown up. Every time I have to help somebody out, I find just what I need. Sounds like magic to me, I told her. Me too, she agreed. Between your pouch and the megapix, I think your grandma was right about there being magic in the air. You know, every single day, I wish she was still around so I could ask her more about it. She knew more about magic than I ever will. I knew exactly what she meant. At least 100 times a day, I wished my mom was around so I could ask her stuff. We cast our lines again. If only I could tell my mom about the fanny pack, the megapix, and the magic. She'd always change the subject whenever I talked about magic. Probably because she didn't believe in it. I wished I could tell her that it was real. Just then, I felt another bite. You've got the gift, girl. I reeled in another trout. This time Rosalie Clare guided it off the hook and let me throw it back. Then she got so quiet, I could hear the fish swishing away in the water. In fact, you have the gift, just like your mama. I couldn't believe my ears. You knew my mom? I wanted to tell you the first day I met you, but the time had to be right. I guess your grandma didn't mention she and I went to Hot Springs High together. picture Florida and Rosalie Clare as teenagers together at school. Weird. Your mama was born not long after I left for college. Once she was about 7, she started spending a lot of time with my grandma. Whenever I'd come in town to visit, Angela would run over and we'd spend the most precious times together. I used to bring her to this very spot to fish. And we'd talk and talk. My mom always had a lot to say. Rosalie Clare's eyes crinkled with the memory. She sure did. When she was about your age, she told me the funniest story. Your grandma used to make her wear nothing but fussy little dresses. Well, your mama couldn't stand it. By the time she was 8, she figured out those little dresses were worth something. Every time she was forced to wear some fancy getup, she'd run straight down to Thrifty Treasures on Main Street and trade in her dress for a pair of used jeans and an old t-shirt. I thought of the pink cupcake dress Florida had tried to buy me. It made me happy to know just how much my mom and I were alike. Finally, your grandma gave up. When your mama had something she wanted to do, her will was mightier than a southern New Mexico sandstorm. She had spunk and big dreams. I remember once, when I came through TRC after a trip I'd made to Russia, your mama must have been about 14 or 15. I was wearing a necklace I'd bought in Moscow, a little red firebird charm on a chain. Legend has it, firebirds live 500 years, then burst into flame to give birth to another firebird. Well, your mama was fixated on that necklace. She couldn't take her eyes off it. I think it was because she so badly wanted to be free as a bird, to start living the life she wanted to live, not the one your grandma Florida had planned for her. Do you still have the necklace? I really wanted to see something my mom had loved so much when she was a kid. No, I gave it to her. She needed it more than I did. She wore that necklace for years. That must be what she was wearing in the photo Grandpa had shown me. You know, Madison, I remember the day you were born, Rosalie Clare said. Your mama called me the next morning. It was the happiest day of her life. That's how she knew my name. I sure do miss her, I said quietly. Yeah, I miss her too. Before you knew it, we were both wiping away tears. Looks like we could both use some cheering up. Ready for a nice slice of pie? Rosalie Clare asked. I nodded, so she lifted the pie from the basket and peeled back the warm layer of tinfoil. She cut 2 fat slices and slid them onto paper plates. It tastes just like my mom's. I savored the first bite and pretended she was the one who'd really made it. I'm not surprised, since we both learned from the pie master herself, Grandma Daisy. Did Florida mind that my mom spent so much time with you and your grandma? At first it made her furious, but eventually she just gave in. There was no controlling Angela once she set her mind to something. I think your grandma was unhappy. It was always Grandma Daisy or me your mama ran to when she needed to talk things through. Then Rosalie Clare looked at me, all serious. When you went into the visitor center back there, it was because you didn't want Florida to catch you with the crazy lady, right? You're not crazy, I told her. Now you know that. At first, you didn't. Yeah, I guess so, I said. She doesn't want me hanging out with you. It would probably best to tell her anyway, Madison. Carrying around secrets can make your head hurt and your heart ache. Truth is usually best. She was right. I decided that it was time to tell Florida all about Rosalie Clare. Chapter 24. Florida's car wasn't in the driveway when we returned to Grape Street, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Rosalie Claire wrapped her arms around me in a big warm hug. That's the best day I've had in a long time. Me too. See you soon? Of course, she said. And best of luck with your grandma. Thanks. I'll need it. Back in the house, I waited on the sofa for Florida and tried to pass the time, sketching pictures in my book, but I couldn't concentrate. What would happen when I told Florida the truth about Rosalie Claire? Would she kick me out? Lock me in my room? I started to get cold feet. I noticed the remote control sitting on the coffee table. I couldn't take my eyes off it, as if some mysterious force pulled at me. Was I possessed? Even though Rosalie Claire had warned me about the possible dangers of deep magic, I longed to escape, and it seemed safer than facing Florida. But where should I go? I flipped through the channels, trying to decide. A reality TV show about fashion models? No way. Another shopping show? No thanks. A news report from Paris. I wondered if that would transport me closer to Violet. Could I zap into the city of Paris and find her waiting for me? I pushed the purple button and the enter button at the same time. The words popped up on the screen. As I was about to push again, Florida walked through the door. Her hair looked like it had burst into flame. It was as orangey red as a desert sunset. I quickly switched off the TV and tossed the remote control onto the table. No escaping now. Well, honey, tell me what you think. Isn't it utterly divine? She twirled in prima ballerina circles. Wow, it's so red, and yeah, it's really divine. I'm pretty sure that was the first time in my entire life I'd used the word divine, but I could tell it made her happy. Then she asked the question. So, darling, what fabulous thing did you do today? Tell Florida everything. Wow. She'd never wanted to hear anything about me before. All I could figure was that she was in a really good mood because of her new hairdo. It was time to tell the truth. My knees began to wobble, and I considered chickening out, but I knew I couldn't keep my secret forever. I inhaled a little courage. I spent the day with Rosalie Claire. Florida's happiness faded fast. Her eyebrows scrunched up, and she looked like a fierce bull ready to charge. Excuse me? What part of she's crazy was not crystal clear, young lady? She's not crazy, Florida. Not at all. How dare you contradict me? When I say that woman is crazy, she is crazy. Do you understand me? Her breath came fast, and her face was tight. Then, I just said what I thought. Actually, I yelled it. I probably shouldn't have, but I really and truly had to say what was on my mind. You don't like Rosalie Claire because my mom liked her and her grandma Daisy better than she liked you. Florida glared at me with fiery eyes. Then she screeched at the top of her lungs. Madison McGee, I forbid you to spend time with that woman again. Now sit your fanny down where I can keep an eye on you. I'm heating up 2 TV dinners, and tonight we are watching TV. Ugh. I'd have preferred if she'd sent me to my room rather than being sentenced to sit next to her, watching her channel surf through her dumb TV shows. But tomorrow, Florida wouldn't be able to keep an eye on me at all. She was going back to work. That was quite a sentence. Madison yelled at Florida. I wonder what our author has to say about that. Let's hear from Lori Arnold.
Phew. Okay, Madison just couldn't put up with all the lying, and so she told the truth about a lot of things. And for the moment, everything is kind of turned upside down. So, like I said before, I have a really hard time with lying myself, and I've always believed that if you don't lie, you never have to worry about getting caught. I am really, truly fascinated when people choose to lie and think that they can get away with it. The truth is, the truth eventually comes out, right? And people lie for a lot of different reasons. So, maybe they're embarrassed about something, or they don't want to get in trouble, or they're trying to make themselves seem more powerful or better than they are. And there are other reasons I can understand a little better, like if a person lies to protect themselves or someone else from danger. So why do you think Madison's grandparents lie so much? Personally, I think Grandpa Jack lies about selling off Florida's shopping stuff because he doesn't want to get in trouble. And Florida lies about the meatloaf and a bunch of other things because she wants Grandpa Jack to think better of her. And I think she lies about Rosalie Clare being crazy because she's embarrassed about something that maybe we'll find out about a little bit later in the book. And now that Florida is out of the house for the day, Madison has decided not to listen to her grandmother, and she heads next door to visit her friend, Rosalie Clare.